you've obviously been through so many different scenarios in business in terms of selling it and getting involved in brokering different deals. I mean, when you typically are approached by a business owner, I mean, what does that typically look like, or how does that conversation go in terms of, are they typically prepared for some type of an exit, or they have no clue, or there's a big differentiator between what they think the business is worth versus the actual? I mean, I threw a bunch of questions at you there, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as a rule of thumb, most sellers aren't ready. So many people come to me almost out of frustration. Obviously, the labor issue has put several people kind of over the edge. They were thinking about selling, and then finding people to work has become a bigger challenge, and they finally just decided they've had enough, and so they're going to sell. And so there wasn't a master plan. The market in the heating and air space, from a sale and acquisition standpoint, has been very strong. It's been a seller's market the last 12 to 18 months. um, and so those people are going to market simply because the multiples have been high, and or they've heard about these high multiples. And so that's kind of the flip side of the coin, that they've heard about people getting these crazy multiples from an exit standpoint. Now's the time to go, never realizing that those companies that are getting the strong multiples or the high multiples are have done certain things to get to that point. And so it's not just everybody's getting great multiples. And so there's a lot of things that have gone into it. You and I have talked about it in the past on other phone calls that we've had, but strong financials, clear books and records, those types of things as business owners. And I've been self-employed since I was 22 years old, probably. And we're often the what we hear is minimize your taxes, minimize your taxes, minimize your taxes. Often leads to creative accounting, as I like to call it. And so then when it's time to sell, they come to me and say, I have this great business and here's what I'm making. And I look at a tax return and it doesn't even resemble the business they're telling me about, but they expect somebody to pay them for that. And so I advise sellers to put yourself in a buyer's shoes. If I came to you and said, Robert, I've got this incredible business doing a couple $1 million in sales, we're making about 400,000. I give you the tax returns to look at and it shows a negative for last year's income. You're going to look at me like I've got two heads. And so a buyer is only going to buy or pay for what they can prove, quite often, because that's all a bank's going to lend on. And a seller is expecting everybody to understand what they've been doing the last 20 years, and there's often a disconnect there. And so clean books and records is probably the biggest thing that I see. Many people treat their business like it's their personal checking account. It pays for all of these things that may or may not be business related. I'm not the IRS and I'm not your accountant, so I'm not here to advise anybody on that, but certainly I could advise on putting yourself in a buyer's shoes. And if it's like Where's Waldo, trying to find where your profit's coming from, then you can't expect to get these higher multiples. And so that's probably the biggest thing that I see, as far as people not being ready, because they've always run the business this way. They've always been trying to minimize taxes. Their accountants told them to minimize taxes. And so as all those things happen, then when it's time to sell, they come to somebody like me and I look at their numbers and I say, well, we can't prove half of the income you're talking about. Then it leads to a frustrated seller, for lack of a better term.